As you were saying about the protests and the rise of racism.
Yeah, as I was saying, I think, if you had asked me like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I was completely adamant that this is the only country for me, and I can't see myself living outside of this for very long. I think now, in light of recent events, it's certainly opened my eyes up a lot more to the possibility that it's okay to be elsewhere too. Though I wouldn't say necessarily that I feel unsafe per se. It does make you feel uncomfortable hearing the things that you do in the media, the kind of rhetoric that a while back people wouldn't have dared to have spoken the way that they are now, and they're doing so very, very openly, and it's just become normalized now, that kind of anti-immigration, anti-foreign, anti whatever else rhetoric that's there. I mean, I would like to think that we're all, British through and through. Yes, we have a different ethnicity, but we are British through and through. We've lived our lives, born here, bred here, grew up here. All our memories, our education, our family, everything has been here. We know of no other land but this. But then, despite doing all of that and making the contributions that we have to society by way of our education, by way of our jobs, and let's be honest, by way of our taxes, right? So there's a lot of contributions that we have made. So to come to this point in our life where, for one reason or another, we're being made to feel a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit unsafe. That's new territory for me. So it's got me thinking that life outside of the UK is a possibility I may have to explore some.
Slim, what's your take? How has the portrayal in the media impacted you and events of happening outside the world from where we are? Outside the world, but within England, where do you feel?
I'm of that opinion where I don't really follow the news as much. I think there's a lot more scaremongering and scare tactics being used and employed and deployed as we speak. This is happening. That so news is always it's manufactured in my eyes. They try to force an agenda just to put people on the point where they're paranoid all the time and fearful, and that sells really. So I see what's going on, and I think there has to be a discussion on this point because there are parties who the grievance party is basically saying, well, the immigrants are taking our jobs, they're coming over, they're coming illegally on boats, and this is not right, and we feel threatened. When our parents came over, they came over with the proper means, didn't they? They applied, they got the visa, and they flew over, and like you said, Abdurrahman, they were a valuable integral part of the society. Paid taxes, worked hard, honest jobs. They were labourers, worked in factories, helped build the economy as what we know in the past it was all factory labourer jobs. They did all that. And they built a platform for us to get educated. The issue is a lot of them are upset with the fact that the ones who are just coming over seeking asylum, and I know it's a delicate situation where the people who are coming over, unfortunately, they have no ways of escaping. If you ever ask them, would you ever leave your homes where you've come from? And if it was an ideal world, they wouldn't. They'll be happy where they are. They'd have their life settled. But unfortunately, with the way situations are, they've come over, risking their lives on small boats and coming over seeking asylum. And now this number's been brandished by billions of pounds being spent on X, Y, and Z to fund them or to house them in hotels. The people who are annoyed are probably thinking, well, the cost of living's gone up. We're not making enough with money as it is. And why is all our taxpayers' money or whatever money that we could have to help us build is being spent there? So it's a very delicate issue. I get it from their point of view. I'm not a sympathizer. I'm not trying to say I'm on the fence here. I just feel as though those individuals feel that way. Some people might call them racist. I'm not here to call somebody a racist or not, but I just feel deep down that their concerns, some of them, not all of them, just say out of 100%, just say 80% of the concerns are fearful of the fact that is it going to be a point where they lose their identity being British because they were born and raised and they've got centuries of people living here, and then and there's a certain percentage of deflecting on all other people who are British in their eyes. But we're all British. I mean, what does British mean? Born and raised here, speak the language, part of the culture, follow, respect society. You respect each other's in ways. So I just feel it's a difficult one, really. You got to see both sides of the story.
But you feel strongly that the media portrayals probably makes it a lot more of an issue than it actually is.
Well, I'm just talking about my experience. I go into town, and obviously there are fear. You might think, if that person, if I'm in the wrong area, could something go wrong? But then it comes down to the fact that they could be thinking the same about us, and it's unfortunate that we are. That's why I refuse to watch news or follow anything news outlets, because I think no news is good news in this day and age. It's got to be where you've got to ask yourselves, do I need that tension in my head on all the time? So yeah, for me, go with the flow, really.
So have you never suffered any racial abuse or racial antagonism? I'll tell you my own experience. I've been on the street in Bradford and cars are driven by and people are shouting out, F off you beep, or go home you beep.
Well, I'm not. I probably have, but then I look at it from another. Maybe it's me being old now or getting older, and I just think whoever is racist in this day and age is purely because of the fact that they've not understood or really realised that we are all one race anyway, whether you're black, white, Asian, whatever you are. And they've got this inner hatred that's been, you're not born a racist. It's just the fact that what you've been fed, and when you've been fed a certain narrative in a certain way, people tend to believe that. And I come across it now. If somebody says out to me now, I just ignore it. I just think, you know what? Your life must be that hard that you're so upset about race that you're going to project your feelings towards me, when you can actually have a conversation with us, and you probably think, wait a minute, he's one of us. He's sound. If you think about it, if you look at history, when world wars happened, it was 2 million Asians from India subcontinent that came and fought. Our great grandparents came over and fought. Well, the British, they were part of that. So let's celebrate the fact that the Commonwealth helped, and then they only stayed over or were called over to build the country from ruins, really. So yeah, they've earned their keep.
So I guess the question is it the media that's overdoing an issue, or is the media? Because obviously it goes both ways, doesn't it? From my memory, I remember growing up, whenever there was a far-right protest, you wouldn't have, back in the early days, it was like 20, 30 people, and a couple of hundred, in the 90s and early millennium to about 2008. But for it to go above 1,000 and for it to go above 100,000, can the media twist that, or is that, does that picture tell you 1,000 words? Yes.
So I think the media has always done that. It's always worked in that way, which is to take whether it's a positive story or a negative story, but make it as negative as they possibly can for their own particular purposes. It's always worked that way, right from the days of the old newspaper. Right, the headline is what sells newspapers, and that's what gets people talking. That's what gets these media organizations richer. And now it's taken a very different form. They've always done that, unfortunately. So yeah, of course, it's about amplifying stories as much as they can for their own agendas. And it's really interesting, isn't it, when you look at what the reality is. There's always going to be two sides to that story, right? There's going to be some aspects that probably legitimately are areas of concern. But then there's many success stories. Let's look at multiculturalism, for example. Nowadays, it's an incendiary term. But to some extent, I think we're the product of a different culture, a different race, let's say, coming into the country. But the success story of that is that a lot of us have grown up, we've been educated the British way, we're contributing to society. A lot of the businesses that, for example, I've set up are contributing massively to the economy. British Asians contribute significantly to the NHS in all sorts of formats. Practically every area of society we're contributing to, right? And that is a real success story. So when we're talking about benefiting this country financially, economically, socially, or otherwise, we've made major contributions. The question is that these media organizations, will they ever really give those success stories the airtime that it deserves? Probably not. So it is really about, I think, giving the public a balanced view on what's going on. Yes, there are some areas in concern. And as Hassan says, migration and those kinds of things are probably as concerning to us as anybody else. We understand that. But at the same time, there's been plenty of success stories of us growing up in this country and contributing to that. Because, ultimately, if it comes down to the migration and all of these things having a negative impact on the country by way of resources, then by the same token, there's all those contributions that we've made to society is also about growing that society, right? So why not give that balanced view of what reality is? Nothing media will ever do that, and that's a shame.
I think there's two things there. One thing is how the current feel amongst the masses is. Another thing is the general portrayal of different people in society. Because remember, the media is there to make money and get traction and get clicks. Certain things, negative stories or stories doing a spin in a particular way, always get more clicks and attract more people.
Yeah.
That's the nature of human beings. But then the other thing is about reporting what has recently been happening, be it the protests outside hotels, which I think has been massively underreported, be it the racist discrimination attacks that and incidents of hate crime that are happening amongst minority communities. Again, I feel that's massively underreported.
Yeah.
Or this conversation started with the protests, just how the protests are being reported. Because I've heard different narratives. I've heard those that feel there were less people that have been reported. Few people say that. A lot of people feel that there was a lot more people attending than that has been reported by both the authorities and the media. I guess that feeds us into that whole mistrust of authority, a mistrust of media groups, and obviously how that adds to insecurity amongst minority communities. Should we be worried?
Speaking on case by case, Mary, I'm speaking from my personal opinion. I feel it comes down to you as a person. If you believe, there's a saying in there. If you're asleep on a night and you hear the wind rattling or wind coming in, you might think it's a ghost and you stay awake all night, right? Or there's a ghost in the house, or you could just shut the window and fall back asleep. It's all in the head, really, isn't it? It's how you see things from your perception. Now, a lot of people, unfortunately, are not really well versed or educated with history in itself. So when there are individuals out there who may have that, racist rhetoric and say, "Oh yeah, all this and all that," and go back to your own country, and you think, well, to be honest with you, people would go back if they had the chance to go back. Do you know where I'm coming from? But if I'm born and raised here, and my name wasn't if it wasn't an Asian name, and you just saw me as a person and we had a conversation, you probably think, "Oh yeah, he's a sound guy, him or sound geezers." This is how I see it. But you're right. It's down to you. I don't really pay much attention to the news. I do. I'm not saying I'm oblivious to it. I am well aware of what's going on. I've got my wits about it, but I don't take it to the point where I'm losing my sleep over it. Yes, I have got my guard up, and that's being sensible. You need to be clever where you are. You need to know exactly who you're mingling with and where you're going. But that's just me being me. I need to be well aware of where I am. I wouldn't just go in somewhere blind. But take it to the next extreme and think, "Oh, everything's going to to pot and everything's the country's going downhill." I don't think it is. You look at the stock market, it's booming. You look at how infrastructure is growing. You've been distracted. That's how I see it. People have been distracted, and there's money to be made. There's billions of trillions of pounds coming into the economy, trickling out in the stock market. So when you look at these sort of things, you think, wait a minute, somebody's making a lot of money, and the ones who are losing out are the ones who are following the agenda. So yeah.
It's and that's absolutely true. If you were to look at the working class, right, regardless of the color of your skin or the religion that you follow or the culture that you come from, there's obviously a shared British culture. There's a shared British lifestyle that we're all a part of. But if you were to really look at the working class, all the problems that any person, regardless of your color or your race, we're facing exactly the same problems, right? Problems at work, problems at trying to earn, trying to provide for your family, put food on the table, bills, all of those things are very, very similar problems that we have. So it's the same life. Behind those closed doors, we will talk about the same issues. So you just think, why is there such a massive divide with the working class in particular? And there really shouldn't be, because we're in the same space, and we're neighbors to each other. We're neighbors to one another, and we have been for years and years. And it really does concern me and grieve me sometimes why there's so much division between us, when after everything is said and done, we live very, very similar lives with the same set of problems.
There's an issue of lack of money being about, and I think it's all about mindset, really, abundant mindset. If you consistently think of lack of, then your mind just focuses on that. It's that whole saying in there. I'll give you an example. I was driving the other day, and I saw a particular car that I was thinking about, and I saw one, and then I saw another one down the road, and I saw another one. So when you focus your mind on something, you tend to sift away everything, and you see that. So people are focusing on the negative, lack of money, lack of this. I get it. It's difficult for everyone. We're all in the same boat. Do you know what I mean? But there are ways of getting out of that as well. You need to see, what can I do now to refine my skills? If I'm doing the same thing I am now, can I move jobs, or can I do, because apparently, there's jobs everywhere in recruitment, and people are just thinking there isn't available. There are. It's just, are you willing to take a sidestep and do something different, take that risk, and earn money? I mean, wasn't there a report that 800 or 900 billion pound was taken by HMRC? That's a lot of money they've taken off the taxpayers, and where is it all going? But nobody questions that. So yeah, the fear is there. It is genuine for some people, but it's always been the case. If you look at history in itself, the one who can spin a narrative where... What's that again?
So just coming, the economy is slowing down, and since 2023, there's been a gradual decrease in number of jobs that are there. So a big employment agency reported last year, so this year, that there's 20,000 drop in graduate roles available, the biggest that they've ever seen.
What, decreased?
So, decreased. So, the job market is tough. Economic times are hard. You've heard of retailers this week, a national retailer going bust. So it's not completely rosy, is it? Times are hard for people.
Well, it's with anything. Our ancestors have been, that's going too far. But I know people who've been through recessions, and there's people who went through the depression stage. So maybe it is a downturn. We had the biggest stock market crash in 2008 when everybody thought everything would go down. Everything went down in COVID 2020, 5 years ago, when everything was a complete shutdown. The point is, we are people are resilient. The Brits are resilient people. We will come back. But if you constantly focus on the negative, then whatever you try to do, there'll be a stumbling block, there'll be a roadblock in front of you. So, I know people who've left the country and moved away to bet themselves. Sometimes that might be the position, like what you just said, but you wouldn't ever think of leaving the country, but not in a bad way. But sometimes you might have to think, wait a minute, let's see what's out there and explore. There's no wrong in that. But to say I'm leaving the country because I feel dangered or threatened, yeah, there will be society pockets of areas where it might be dangerous, where they believe the narrative it's so deep rooted there, where they feel as though, yeah, we don't want people here. But then there's other parts. We live in Leeds and Bradford and big cities like this where everybody gets on with everybody. You go into city centres and everybody's chatting to you.
Just quickly on that point of everybody getting on with everybody. Obviously, the flag raising thing's been big in the news for the last few weeks. So BD2, Green Gates, Harrogate Road, that side, flags and white, idle flags have appeared everywhere. On the main road, side streets, Harrogate Road, the council come to take them down. Overnight, people come and put them back up.
But they're proud to be Brits, aren't they? They just want to show that they're British. They're putting their flags. That's their country. That's where they're born. But to see that as being racist, I don't... okay, football play, England are winning the World Cup. We'll all have England flags on our cars then, won't we? You know what I mean? We've been tooting our horns, oh yeah, England won the World Cup and everything. You do that. But now I think it's just been tainted in a way. This is what the media wants. We see a British flag, he must be racist. He's proud of that. That's his country. That's their country. If I had a flag on, would I be, oh, yeah, look at him, he's coconut? No, it's not. I find it weird. 10 years ago, if somebody had their flags up, you'd be thinking, yeah, man, he's a patriot. He's patriotic. But now you see us thinking, oh, is it a I don't get it. Seriously, if a person wants to put a flag outside his own house and he owns that property, let them do what they want to do. That's how I see it.
Right, Abdurrahman, what's your take?
I think there's a lot of legitimacy to what Hassan said there, and it's a really interesting perspective. I think it all comes down to perception, isn't it? When you sometimes you perceive other people negatively, and it's a perception in your brain, and they might look at you and perceive you in a different way, and it's a perception in their brain. Both of those perceptions are false. We treat each other based upon that perception. I think you're right, and
it's the same question to you though. Would you say being patriotic across the St. George flag, waving high across your property, is a sign that you're a patriot, or is it a sign that a lot of people have spoken of feeling vulnerable, especially when they've seen it on places of worship, next to the Chinese takeaway, outside the Indian takeaway. Some of these have been left over recent weeks.
Yeah,
is that the same sign of patriotism, or is that sign of something a little bit more sinister?
In some circles, it can be, right. In some circles, right, any national flag that's kind of displayed in that many numbers can sometimes represent more kind of sinister motives, racial or otherwise. We get that. That's historic, not just in Britain, but any other country's been that way. But I think back to Hassan's point, it is about the intention of the individual. You might have some people that are deeply rooted in xenophobia and racism, and they'll fly the flag for that purpose. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's somebody else who just is simply proud to be British and proud of his national heritage, and is a very normal, everyday guy who just wants the best for his people and his country. So that's a very different type of person. And if we were to just judge a person by the flag that he or she decides to display, then I think that's a problem within us rather than the person displaying the flag, if that makes any sense.
But guys, as always, great conversation starter. Let's continue this some other time. Brilliant. Thank you so much, boys. Till the next one.